the program this afternoon so we can safely follow through. But you're all welcome. I can see Sareen, he's in the call. I think I should also probably, and there's a few people actually still getting in. So with I think the screen keeps popping up. So I'll just admit a few people there. Can also see Kitsume says in the call. Okay. So one second, let's just admit a few more people. Looks like everybody's trying to jump in. Okay. Hello, welcome. Okay. Okay, so we can begin. And first off, I'd love to say that today's webinar is really looking at an overall agenda on women in WASH. And the topic of focus is innovative and evidence-based water initiatives that advance the water sector transformation and catalysts for improved gender equality. So we are asking the question, what is being done and what more do we need to do? And we hope that this is going to be a very engaging session. And we shall begin with Sareen, who already showed us her face. So thank you for that one. I think you can begin with the open remarks. So Sareen is our SuSanA Africa Regional Chapter coordinator. I'm sure you're aware of the newly launched chapter. And we have been quite excited about it, and it will be a pleasure to really hear a little later some details concerning that. So Sareen, you have the floor.
Thanks, Chaiwe. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone, and good evening. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We truly appreciate this, and this is really the first of our webinar series that we hope to run for the next 1 year on different thematic areas. One particular thematic area that ANEW and SuSanA have taken a great interest in, and which was equally the basis for the establishment of the SuSanA Africa Regional Chapter, is the question really of gender equality, inclusion, right to water and sanitation, but a very strong focus on hearing the voices of women and girls in the sector. We really welcome you. Thank you very much, Dr. Azzika Tanko, AMCOW, for being here with us, Ada, Priya, and Sheila, to share with us a bit your views, your insight, and your perspectives moving forward. This webinar will be widely shared and disseminated, of course, on the SuSanA Africa Regional Chapter platform, but what we would be doing afterwards is developing an e-publication, which is going to really form part of a compendium, really, of advocacy materials that we're going to be using towards any programs or initiatives that have to do with gender on the continent, whether informing policy work, implementation, whether sensitizing and supporting our partners and our members. So this is the kickoff. You are the pioneers of this, and we really thank you today for being here with us. Thank you, Jaiwe.
Okay, thank you, Sareen. Thank you for that, those opening remarks. I think that really sets the tone very nicely. And we'll quickly move on just to catch up on the little lost time that we've had. We shall have Priya, Nath, who is a representative of WaterAid, and specifically he is the Equity, Inclusion and Rights Advisor. and he will speak on championing the mainstreaming of gender and disability inclusive water, sanitation, and hygiene, and what has been the greatest successes in the program and what is lacking. Priya?
Hi, everyone.
Rather, sorry, I'm being corrected, pardon me.
No problem. No problem. That's the first time I think I've been mistaken for a man. But
sorry about that.
no, not a problem, not a problem. Let me please just share my screen, if I can,
yes.
to go through this presentation. So thank you for inviting me here and for inviting WaterAid really to share some of its its learnings, and we're really happy to be at this first meeting and on such an important topic that is very dear to our hearts. My name is Priya Nath, as just pointed out, and today I wanted to focus on I've been asked to focus on what our journey has been like to mainstream gender equality, particularly in our WASH work. And I'm also going to focus on what are the things that we have learned are most important in our work on mainstreaming gender equality, and what else we still need to do or we have been maybe struggling with a little bit more. Can everyone see my slides, my screen?
Yes, we can see it. I believe everybody should be able to. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. And I apologize if any of this is too basic, but I just really wanted to set the scene of our journey to understanding why WASH is a women's rights issue, because I think how we frame the issue of gender and WASH is so important in terms of then how we move to tackling it, to addressing it, to playing our part in it. So from those of you who are more crossover with the gender sector, you know that the triple burden that women's rights actors talk about in terms of women's work, this triple burden of reproductive, productive, and community labour, is so very clearly connected to WASH and so very clearly reliant on and made worse by inadequate WASH and inadequate WASH and water systems. For just looking at the reproductive burden, all of the cooking, the cleaning, the childcare, the sourcing and preparing of food, all of it intricately linked with water availability, with WASH availability and WASH quality. The productive work that women so often are responsible for in the informal sector in terms of subsistence farming, smallholder farming, market gardening, again, so heavily reliant on water and so impacted by water scarcity and failure of water systems. And then again, community labour, we've been reminded in this COVID time how many frontline community health volunteers are actually women, and how much they are at the front line, therefore, of exposure when hygiene practices, for example, hygiene facilities are not up to scratch, where water is not available for protection, sanitation is not of quality and of safe provision. So this really clearly to us in WaterAid spells out why WASH is a women's rights issue, and why actually you can't necessarily achieve gender equality without really strengthening WASH systems and WASH availability. Yet still, as you all know, women are often the furthest away from the decision making in our sector, in water, particularly in WASH more broadly. This study by the World Bank in 2018, which looked at across 64 water and sanitation service providers in 28 countries. I mean, these statistics are quite shocking. Still 18% on average of utility workers that were looked in those utilities worked at are women. 23% of the engineers and managers are female. And 12% of the utility sampled had absolutely no female managers. So these figures are quite shocking and still very an up-to-date representation of our sector, despite what I just showed on the last slide. So what has been part of our journey has been that the analysis we do at the very beginning of our work is absolutely vital. If we're not employing a solid gender analysis in our work, then we will miss, and we will reduce the size of the problem, reduce the scale, and reduce the kind of the dimensions of the problem. So from the very beginning of our journey, we've been working on gender equality and disability inclusion in WASH for the last 10 years, but we have traditionally been quite comfortable at thinking about these practical gender needs that you see on the left of the screen, but more over time have begun to recognize and work on some of these strategic gender interests that without the strategic part of this diagram, we don't get to gender transformation or proper gender equality in WASH. So I just wanted to share our evolution of how we think about and analyze, well, how we analyze in our work, do the gender analysis in our work. Gender, age, disability, and health status as these universal factors that we always have to assess, analyze, and work on in our programs. But what has been more challenging is looking at it through this intersectional lens, understanding how things like ethnicity, religion, caste, sexual orientation, landlessness, how they interact with things like gender, and rather than treating all women and girls as one-dimensional, same in our work. So this has been a challenge, looking at the intersections in our work. Again, when we look at barriers to WASH, we have traditionally analysed environmental, physical barriers, institutional barriers, and attitudinal barriers. But our reflection is that it's this ability to analyse and work on the attitudinal barriers that have been some of the hardest and some of the most challenging for a very mainstream WASH organisation to do. So it's an area where we have to put more of our effort. And part of that has been more recently starting to adopt again from more women's rights sector some of the way that they look deeper into how the depth of and the quality of the programming. So we've started to use this more recently in our work, this scale from going from gender harm, making sure that we're never gender harmful, to thinking about how are we being gender inclusive, how are we being gender empowering, how can we be or contribute to being gender transformative. So we now categorize being gender inclusive and disability inclusive as a minimum standard in our work, that this is what we should always be doing regardless of anything else, but that we want to strive towards being more gender empowering, and really articulating that this means tackling some of those unequal relations in WASH, working with more gender focused partners, and looking at our internal transformation that's needed. And that ultimately we do want to contribute towards transformation of power structures and imbalances broadly in the environment, but that we will contribute. We can't in ourselves control and work on that. I want to share some examples. You asked for evidence base of this being applied to some of our system strengthening work. So in our SuSWASH program, Cambodia and Timor-Leste, this is an example of them taking this gender lens of harmful, inclusive, empowering, and transformative, and applying it to the sector strengthening building blocks. So looking at strategic planning, at financing, at institutional arrangements. And they did this at the very beginning of their SuSWASH program, and they marked these M and L is where the districts they're working in would currently fall or fell at that time. Pakistan, our colleagues in Pakistan also used this model of mapping to apply to their system strengthening work in Sindh province. And you can see here that gender and social inclusion in its current mapping was of the sector was marked as minimal. So a lot of work to do to improve. Again, another example of how colleagues in Cambodia have articulated more here. What would a weak system look like? What would this building blocks look like if they were weak from a gender lens, gender equality point of view? What would they look like if the system was medium, functioning at a medium level? What would it look like if it was stronger, and what do we desire? So they have more mapped here clearly what would things look like that they can better plot where their work and where the system as a whole is. I'm really aware of time. So the last thing I want to touch on is that this is not just about what we do in our kind of program work or our implementation work. It's very much when we think about gender equality and being properly gender transformative, it's what we do inside our organization. So we have for a long time understood some of our gaps, and that has been around internal capacity building, recognizing that we are a WASH organization and that the capacity building on gender equality, but on all things, has to be absolutely fundamental, and it has to be ongoing. We have done some great capacity building of ourselves in the past, and then we've let the agenda slip, and then we've had lots of changeover of staff. So this constant capacity building of ourselves is absolutely critical, but also tackling our own biases and our personal. We all come with gender norms and a gendered perspective, and tackling this internal bias is the only way that we can increase our skills, but also increase our confidence. We've recognized a very big gap in the way that we monitor and measure gender equality and disability inclusion in our work, and that what we measure is what we get. So we need to fill that gap very quickly. And then finally, we have very much come to the realization that we have to have these strategic and long-term partnerships with women's rights and disabled rights organizations. Otherwise, we can't do truly transform work. So these are some examples of the way that we've tried to tackle internal change. We now have a formalized gender equality working group to be a point of expertise, challenge, and collaboration. And I think the challenge part is very important. We've started a process of gender equality self-assessments across all our offices and teams. And this is very much led by the Gender Equality Working Group. And it's something to really make sure that we're looking at ourselves internally before we start to criticize externally. We have some countries, what a huge marker of our success, I think some of our most successful efforts have been in those countries where we have specialist roles, where they have prioritized employing someone who will really help to embed and mainstream these issues. So these are countries that have done that. And then we have these quality program standards, and we've mandated some very specific equality and inclusion principles as our risk critical and minimum standards, so that they are things that we have to do to meet not just our donor requirements, not just what we think is important, but actually meet our own quality program standard. And then I'll start with this final reflection. This is from WaterAid Cambodia, of their works beyond our organization, beyond the WASH implementation to the sector as a whole. They have been critical in starting this young professional program in WASH and really thinking about the gender balance and targeting 70% women for this young professional program, so that over time we can contribute to improving that gender balance and decision making in WASH. So then they've also then strongly supported this Women in WASH network in Cambodia for existing professionals. So I will stop there. Here's some of our publications. Thank you so much for listening. I'm really interested to learn from everyone here. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Priya, for that wonderful presentation. I think we would definitely look forward to the presentation as an attachment, for further response and reference. And I can see Doreen is giving you a round of applause there. So in the interest of time, we will push the discussion towards the end. So if anybody has some questions, do write them down, and we can have the discussion at the end of it. So we should have about 15 minutes for discussions. We'll try as much as we can to capture as much of the discussions as we can. We'll quickly jump into the next presentation. And we have Dr. Tanko Azzika, who is a representative of the African Ministries Council on Water, AMCOW. And he is the Senior Policy Advisor. And he will touch on gender and youth strategy. How do they address the transitions towards innovative and evidence-based water interventions?
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Distinguished guests, good afternoon, good evening, and then good morning to some of us. With your permission, I want to share some few slides. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen. Thank you very much. And if you would like, do feel free to keep your video open as well, if that is something that you're comfortable with. But go ahead, we can see your screen and we're good to go.
Thank you so much. I'm comfortable with that, but the network is not too good. So I will wish that I just proceed with the screen sharing, after which I can show my face when I'm no more, presenting. If that is okay with you.
That's okay. Thank you.
Thanks so much, distinguished guests. As my colleague has rightly painted the picture, we will now look at some of the few challenges concerning gender and youth mainstreaming WASH in the African context. How can these particular strategies and policies help our transition together towards innovative and evidence-based WASH initiatives in the continent? To start with, my colleague Priya has already painted the picture regarding the figures, but scanning through the continent, this is where we are regarding gender equality and water and sanitation in the sector. We already know that 1 out of 3 women in this world is exposed to so many calamities regarding diseases, harassment and abuse, just by trying to access a toilet facility or a water facility. In sub-Saharan Africa, 71% of water collection tests is left for the women and children. And then this is coming from the Water Barometer of Solid that just released quite recently. And then half of this world's population, on world's hospital beds are filled with women, are filled with children. Some of these sicknesses partially due to water-related challenges. And what is so striking is the fact that close to 770 million man-hours, are used to collect water by women. And we all know what they will face. We all know what they are missing by just looking at this number of hours. They are missing in education, they are missing in their own livelihood, just for trekking to get water for all of us, you and I in particular. And close to 50%, in sub-Saharan Africa, the cost of water and sanitation access is close to 50%. We bear the burden. So which means that if we're able to give universal access to water and sanitation to everybody, this cost burden will have also in one way or the other reduced. Let's look at the policy initiatives, the commitments that are underpinning our effort insofar as water and sanitation provision is concerned. I'm trying to move to the next slide. In the next slide, we are looking at what are the commitments, what are the groundbreaking commitments that are underpinning water and sanitation services delivery, and why gender equality in particular is very important. We have the agenda. Sorry, I don't know whether you can see my next slide.
Tanko, it's not moving.
It's not moving.
Yeah, it's stuck.
Sorry about that. Let me try one more time. Has it moved?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. The groundbreaking continental commitments that are underpinning gender and youth initiatives in this continent. We have the Africa Agenda 2063 and its cross-cutting aspirations 3 and 6, which are all talking about democracy, good governance, and then women and youth-driven development projects in the continent. And of course, we have the Sharm el-Sheikh Equity Declarations of 2008 that are also underpinning the inclusion of youth, of women and children in the provision of water and sanitation services across the continent. And of course, our UNGO Africa Sun commitments. And then the SDGs, 1, 3, and 5, and 6, all these goals cannot be achieved if we don't take a serious consideration for women matters in planning and policy formulation. And we are aware that the African Union declared 2015 a year of women empowerment. And yet we all know where we are now, partially because serious commitments have not been attached to gender and youth inclusion and mainstreaming in water and sanitation services. And above all else, the 2003 Maputo Protocol is also very clear on the human right to water and sanitation. And the human right to water and sanitation is clearly central to the foundation of sustainable development. And without the consideration of gender and youth issues in this, we will be nowhere. And what is also clearly underpinning our implementation insofar as the continent is concerned is also the AMCOW policy, gender policy and youth strategy 2011, and of course the youth strategy of 2013, which are currently also under review. So with all these commitments, we will have no excuse at all if we are not able to mainstream direct issues of women, direct issues of youth in the implementation, policy formulation, implementation, insofar as we are all aiming towards achieving the sustainable development goals by 2030. And then ANEW told me that what are some of those challenges? How can these gender and youth strategies or initiatives help us transition smoothly, concretely, towards innovative and evidence-based water sanitation initiatives in the continent? Of course, everything starts and ends, like I always say, with policy and strategy. So this policy and strategy from our works lays solid foundations for gender and youth planning and then mainstreaming into water and sanitation across all member states. These policies are also very critical to help us advance because they also provide us the opportunity to look at how we can come out with quality data, disaggregated data, so that we can collect this and mainstream this into policy planning and then implementation. These policies are also very critical. These strategies are also very critical because they also present huge opportunities for innovative financing and capacity building, as has been mentioned by the previous speaker. And of course, we cannot do without strategies because they are also the tools, they are also the opportunity, the platforms that we can use to hold our high-level decision makers accountable, our heads of states, our ministers, and then our technical experts. Of course, they also present the opportunity for research and application of science and technology towards solutions across the African continent. And like I earlier on mentioned, gender and youth recognition are central to human rights. We have the African Charter for Human Rights. We have also the 2003 Maputo Protocol. And then we also have the UN Declarations of Water and Sanitation clearly in 2010 as a human right. These are all very critical issues that we need to consider. Through our own rapid assessments, some youth-led initiatives, which I recognize as groundbreaking, are shared in this particular slide. Of course, I understand we have our colleague from Young Water Solution who can throw more light on some of these things. But I thought that some of these initiatives were already things that are helping us toward transitioning to innovative, evidence-based solutions to water and sanitation in the continent. We can look at the rainwater harvesting initiative in Hakabali in Uganda, and of course the integrated water and food security initiative by the Young Solutions in Burkina Faso. And of course, the UNESCO Gender Insight. This is an initiative that I think we can invest more in because it's also promoting women initiatives in the science and development, as has been underscored. The participation of women in science, technology, and innovations is still very limited. And I think we also have innovative initiatives regarding the Football for Wash initiative in the continent, targeting some countries like Ghana, Kenya, and Mozambique. And of course, the Young Artisan Entrepreneurial Initiative of Water and Sanitation for the Urban Poor that I know in Ghana, in Kenya, and other countries is also breaking grounds, involving women artisans, involving the young men in planning, in supporting their own community members, and also earning a livelihood out of water and sanitation services provision. And I think we also have to take advantage of the African Academy of Science initiative. I mean, you can talk of the University of Witwatersrand's software to alert women where to find a latrine when they are in distress conditions. And I think these innovative software and initiatives need to be encouraged. And of course, the digital water automatic teller machines, some of them in Uganda, in Kenya, and wherever. These are all very innovative things that when we are able to capture, when we are able to mainstream gender, we're able to mainstream youth into these things, they will not only be earning a living, they will also have decent access to water and sanitation solution. And then, of course, the AMREF One-Stop Sanitation Solutions Center also in Uganda. and then some ICT innovative ideas also in South Africa. These are some of the, I just took the top-notch summary of the key initiatives that we can build on and discuss further in this. But of course, above all these things, the challenges are still there, which are affecting from policy formulation and planning. There is no disaggregated data in some times, in some countries, and in some reports. Of course, lack of innovative youth and gender initiatives, the few that has been summarized. We want all those initiatives, innovative ones, to be, in fact, all the 55 member states in the continent. Of course, it has already been underscored regarding under capacity, inadequate capacity, and the skills to deliver gender and youth sensitive initiatives in most of the countries that we are currently working. It is also very important to remark that, you know, we the youth and the women and the young girls also have to have the drive, the self-confidence to be able to initiate, you know, our own initiatives and call for support. There are also still challenges regarding harassment, discrimination. When we have all the groundbreaking commitments that are against harassment and discrimination, these are still ongoing. And then inadequate funding for gender and youth sensitive initiatives is also something that we really need to look at. I will pause here. I still have one last slide, but that will be gathering ideas to call all of us for action. So I'll pause here and then I'll come back later in the show. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Azzika, for that wonderful presentation. And at this point, I can see the chat is on fire, if I could say that. And there's some great points being raised there. And I think if we can have Kitumetse maybe bank some of those questions ahead of time, so that by the time we are getting to the discussions, maybe some of them can be highlighted and shared with the rest of the group. And at this point, we will jump into the next presentation. We shall have Sheila Ruyondo, who is representing the Young Water Solutions organization and is the East Africa local coordinator for this organization. And we are looking at, or she will be guiding us through a presentation on case studies on the innovative and evidence-based initiatives that have addressed and championed systems change for young people in the WASH sector. What is your call of action to the global WASH community in line with this in Africa? So, Sheila, you have the floor.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Hello?
Yeah, I think we can hear you clearly.
I'm having a network problem. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, that's no problem. We can hear you quite well, so not a problem on this end.
All right.
The floor is yours. If you would like to present, do feel free to share your screen. And if you like to keep your camera on, that's fine too. And let me just remind everybody that we have just 10 minutes to present. So okay. It's now 15:40. I think we should have the presentation over by 15:50. Or with East African time, that's actually 16:40 and 16:50. And it also varies depending on where you are in the world. So
I'm yeah, in Uganda, so.
All right. Yeah. Please go ahead. Thank you.
I'll just go ahead and do a verbal presentation without sharing the screen. I have a problem with the network, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Perfect. So my name is Sheila Ruyondo, and I'm the regional coordinator for the Young Water Fellowship Program in East Africa under Young Water Solutions. My opening statement is very key because our programs are focused on innovations in WASH. And I would like to say that innovation and women's empowerment are rarely discussed within the same context, but each has essential value for human progress. So it's also key to note that both innovation and gender equality underpin all of the Millennium Development Goals, and both require thinking and acting beyond existing predefined parameters. So as Young Water Solutions, our flagship program is the Young Water Fellowship, a program that aims to empower young leaders, carry out WASH initiatives in their communities, and create water social businesses. This is done by offering them an intensive water and business training programs, funding grants, and mentoring support by senior level experts. Since 2017, we've had 39 young entrepreneurs from 21 countries who have benefited from this one-year support and have improved the water and sanitation conditions of around 30,000 people as a result of their pilot projects. It's also key to note that in 2019, we implemented the first East African edition of the program, supporting 10 entrepreneurs from 5 East African countries who are at the moment finishing their initial pilot projects. We are now planning the first national edition of the Young Water Fellowship in Uganda for 2021. It is also very important to note that our projects are evidence-based as imperative to ensure women's participation and rights in socio-economic gains, focusing on innovation, which presents a particularly exciting pathway for seizing the present moment and achieving the goals of women's empowerment and gender equality. This has also led to realization of goals for the target objectives that we have. I'll quickly highlight on through the Young Water Fellowship Program, our Young Water Fellows have been able to document case stories, have been able to act as change agents in the communities, but also we've seen them influence policy at different levels in relevant countries where the initiatives are running. This has also been able to enhance the breaking of boundaries for strategic partnerships. You know, being young entrepreneurs, our fellows initiatives in target countries have forged such strategic alliances between the government, private sector corporations, and civil society actors, producing transformative impacts on the well-being and empowerment of millions of women. We've also seen a case story on how the young fellows have been able to engage women in design and diffusion. This is very evident through one of our fellows in Kenya. She's called Sylvia Nyaga. Through her initiative, SuSanA Consultancy, she has been able to design and manufacture mobile toilets for people with disabilities, the elderly, women, name it. And she has effectively integrated women as key actors in shaping innovations, producing moderate to high impacts on women's well-being and empowerment. As I come to a conclusion, I'm looking at the other fellow who's actually in Uganda. She's called Patricia Nekesa. Her case story is actually also standing out because she has been able to capitalize on opportune timing and context. Her initiative is about targeting farmers, but also looking at women in the cattle corridor of Nakaseke, where she has been able to successfully pilot her initiative. And it has been optimal timing, and it has capitalized on multiple trajectories of socio-economic and political transformation already underway in their societies. This has also enabled her to leverage favorable societal conditions, which often trigger big and broad-based shifts in women's lives. And it has also contributed to reshaping women's position in the family, the workplace, and in the socio-political arenas. In a conclusion, my call for action would be based on integrating and supporting youth-led initiatives that will be key in applying a gender lens to technological, economic, and social innovations that aim to solve some of the most challenging problems in international development. To understand further about our young water fellows and their successful pilots or initiatives, please visit our website and be able to read and understand further about the impact they are creating in their communities. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you for that very timely or time-bound presentation. And it's very insightful to actually get these details and these case studies, very, very impressive case studies that you shared here today. Again, we hope that the questions are being saved up and will be opened later. And it's also great to see your face. Thank you for that as well. Yeah, so at this point, we shall move on to the next presentation. And this is by Ada Oko-Williams and a representative, a senior wash manager in sanitation, co-founder of the African Women Sanitation Professional Network and African Women Sanitation Professional Network organization. So the organization came after the actual position. And the topic of focus is the water sector transformation and systems change catalysts, and how has the network positioned itself to engage in the sector's transformation for gender equality. So I can already see the presentation up, which is great. And you have the floor.
Okay. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, depending on where you are. My name is Ada Oko-Williams, and thank you, Chiva, for the introduction already. But just to say that I work for WaterAid. That's my day job. I work for WaterAid as Senior Wash Manager, Sanitation, and I'm proudly African. I just want to put that on the table first and foremost. I'm really, really excited to be joining this inaugural webinar on the series, as Sareen had indicated earlier on. I know we don't have a lot of time, and I'm going to just go on straight to talk to you about the African Women Sanitation Professionals Network. So it's a body network. It's a new, it's an emerging network. We've been talking about this for about a year plus, and finally coming to fruition. But it's a network that primarily seeks to promote diversity, inclusion, and seek opportunities for African women to, be positioned and to engage so they can contribute to the development of the sanitation sector on the continent initially and primarily, but globally as well. So who we are, I've just mentioned that, and we're really looking at how we can, through this promotion of engagement of African women, shape, build, strengthen them in a manner that their contributions and value addition to the conversations on the continent will lead to the development achievement of the SDGs, especially as the world has set itself. And we are also about changing the narrative of the African woman, primarily from the user of sanitation services to one who is empowered to engage. That's very, very important to us. Why are we doing this? I could go on also with the statistics, but gratefully Priya and Tanko before me had also put out most of the statistics and the background reasons why it's important and imperative for women to, for sanitation and wash indeed to be looked at from the lenses of inclusion of women and gender generally, that conversation. So we've noticed in our own course of work that there's very poor, lack of effectiveness in terms of women in the sanitation agenda across different countries, and even at the sanitation at the Pan-African level convening, for instance, let alone the global convenings that happen. Doreen is here. Doreen is is the co-founder with me, and Doreen can attest to the fact that there are a number of times we've been at meetings globally that we recognize that we're the only ones on the table as it is. But having a table, we quickly also did realize at the time we started this conversation that sitting at the table was not equal to having a voice. So we want to be able to have a seat at the table, recognize that that seat is not just enough, have a voice, and then not just have a voice that is strategically supporting us to strategically organize, mobilize, and contribute meaningfully. So it's a matter of our voice, and these are very important for us, having a place at the table, having a voice, and then also engaging meaningfully and being heard, let that voice be heard. We also noticed, and Tanko spoke a lot about the different instruments and policies, and we recognize as well that from programs and initiatives, if you take your time to look through most of them, and especially around sanitation, we recognize how much these policies, programs, and initiatives often fail to realize the gendered dimension of access to sanitation for not just women, but everyone, and the benefit that brings for not just women, but for everyone. So with all of this recognition, oh, sorry, that was not supposed to happen. We kind of like started this convening to bring together African organizations, African women that are professionals. Professional in this sense means you're working in the sanitation sector, or you have some training in the sanitation sector, no matter the level at which you play, to come together so that we can organize, we can, prepare and, do our homework that will lead to proper engagement beyond the engagement, the tokenistic engagement of, okay, we're going to have a workshop, we need 2-3 women to also, make up the panel or something like that, because that's also happening. So we really want to be able to shift from that. We want to be able to look at, whilst focusing on this primary goal of increasing in number, equipping and advancing our prominence as women are working in sanitation, we really wanted to address it from the political perspective as well. We know how important the having political will, or how political will drives any agenda, and particularly so for sanitation. One of the reasons why sanitation progress has been very slow, we know, is because of low political prioritization. So creating a platform where we can organize and strategize, as we've said, we want to be able to engage in the political processes of the continent. If that means having meetings with the ministers and the heads of states, being at those meetings and speaking from lived experiences, from what we know, from the expertise that we bring on board, speaking to them about this and ensuring that they prioritize sanitation, this is what we want to do. And how do we want to do that? We're actively looking at reviewing policies, position papers, putting out position papers, think pieces, advocating, whatever it takes. This is what the African Women Sanitation Professionals Network is about, bringing that space to the table. And let me mention also why this is critical and important. Sometimes, and as I mentioned earlier on, people just, you call a few women and, rubber stamp them on processes and platforms and initiatives. But then, because there's no organizing, the value of contribution is not effective, one. And then on the second hand, also, you invite, there are meetings, and one of the excuses people give of, where are the women? So we want to be able to present this from that it's an organizing, it's a platform where everyone, you can know where to go to. Secondly, we want to be able to address the issue of sanitation access also and development through education and capacity development. Education, the formal training processes and that goes on the continent, we want to be plugged into that, having a voice and contributing to them. Therefore, we're also calling not just professionals that are on the ground and in the field working, but are in the academic institutions as well. Professional development for young women, especially, that are already in the sanitation sector or are working in the sanitation space and have found that there is no real chances because of what we clearly know, and I'll call it the boys club syndrome, where men actively promote and support younger men to grow into positions of power. We want to be able to have that kind of opportunity to do that as well for younger women working in the sanitation space, and that we're doing through global networking, building alliances, and even demanding some affirmative action where it is possible. Having said that, that's kind of generally how we're set up, and I'll mention quickly that this is a membership organization of individuals of sub or national level engagement or organizing, or existing platforms, existing convening of women already doing something in the work sector. This is kind of like a big model, pardon the use of that word, but well, no apologies at the same time, model platform for all of us to come together and really organize. In that vein, we're very proud and happy to be announcing that Zambia is our flagship chapter, where the women have self-organized and created this platform, and Currently, they're planning to undertake a baseline of key issues around how women work in sanitation in Zambia. And then also they have as a major program, the mentoring program, starting off with those, identifying and supporting and promoting entrepreneurship with women as well. So very proud to say, Chaiwa, you are very much here. If anyone can recognize on the picture here, along with Barbara, who is also one of the steering committee members. In very recent time, taking forward the kind of work that we are hoping to do, we've also just recently started our conversations with Toilet Board Coalition and seeing how we can use that platform or work with that platform to see how it promotes women in the sanitation economy. So it's a budding relationship, it's a new relationship, but Toilet Board Coalition is quite excited to want to work with us. And like in Zambia already, a group of women entrepreneurs have been identified. In other countries, which I'll also talk about, there are also groups that are being set up and we are plugging into this. So watch the space for this. In terms of what's next, we're looking at country level chapters and as I said earlier on, where women haven't organized already in countries, we want to be able to create that. But where by all means there are existing initiatives and platforms or convening of women interested in these issues, please, we're also sending out an invitation, come join us and let's see how we work together so that in every country on the African continent, we clearly have a platform, a go-to platform that can support the work that that can support the advancement of sanitation, especially for African women. In line with that, if you want to learn more about us, there's a LinkedIn page that we're setting up, that we've set up already. You can quickly go on LinkedIn and find us and then register your interest as we're working on the registration platform and understanding how we really anchor this program within the continent. We are clear about this being a continent-wide initiative. And in that light, we're talking with AMCOW, very proud to say that, hoping to have our initial secretariat, so to speak, and base within the AMCOW secretariat as well. And they've been gracious and supportive in that regard. We was also talking to the African Water Association. Also very interested in what we're doing and supportive. We're building global partnerships on the Equal Aqua Partnership. I don't know if you're aware of it, but if you're not, it's a World Bank initiative has been set up to recognize and, that's recognized and been set up to advance the case for women participation and development in the wash sector, supporting with mentoring and the necessary tools and, understanding of processes for how to, analyze and engage. And again, we're very happy that we're joining the inaugural webinar from the African chapter of SuSanA. This is critical for us because we're also very positioned that, as I mentioned earlier, through the policy and policy reviews and think pieces and contribution to processes on the continent, we hope to also be able to change the narrative on the on knowledge management or knowledge generation, which SuSanA is really about, and then necessarily bring on board the much needed African perspective to the kind of work that SuSanA does. So it's really time for us to, take leadership, change the narrative in the sanitation sector on the continent. But again, just to let us speak specifically, what does success really look like for us? And this is what guides us. More women in leadership roles in sanitation development through personal as well as group effort. We want to be able to see women-led businesses increasing and growing with the right resources, financing and technical support across the continent, and that invariably has, you understand, the multiple effect on the wider society. And I think Priya's presentation showed how addressing the issues for women has rippling effect on the whole system and on the whole community. We want to be able to see what success will look like for us. Sanitation capacity development and formal training programs, even mentorship and whatever, really promoting gender equity and equality. Let there be equal opportunities. We are training packages for where girls will not be expected at secondary school levels to only go and study home economics because they're meant to manage when the boys are asked to study engineering, or pushed and guided and led to engineering, encouraged to study engineering, just for an instance. We want to be able to see that change on the continent. And we want to be able to influence and support pan-regional policies and processes. And I'm speaking particularly now, for example, there is the African sanitation policy guidelines process that is ongoing. We want to be able to see those kind of processes effectively reflect, acknowledge, first of all, recognize, acknowledge, and address gender inequalities in a very, very wholesome manner. And I'm happy to also announce that we, as a network, are currently working with AMCOW to review the AMCOW declarations from a gender perspective. That's an offer that we have made, and these are the kind of things we want to be able to do, to look at the reports from the countries, analyze them on the gender front, and see, and also profile, suggest what could possibly be done to address gaps that exist. And then definitely we want greater visibility. And I'm saying here, hashtag at the table, hashtag with a voice, and hashtag, most importantly, to be heard. And just to also wrap up, I just want to remind everyone what two women that I kind of follow, and I like what they've said. One of them is Mariah Forbes. She's the executive vice president of the Forbes group, and she said something about, it's very easy when we talk about gender equality and stuff, that we say, okay, women say we don't have a seat at the table, and the next thing is a seat is pushed at you. There's a seat provided for you, but it's a much deeper level of work that is needed to ensure that even when that seat is provided and seemingly your voice is heard, that voice counts. And so this is what part of what guides us. We want to be able to ensure that we have a seat, we are heard, and our voice counts. Finally, and last point I'm saying, let us also be guided by Kamala Harris's recent quote that she may be the first, but never going to be the last. We take the same position. We say we may be the first, hashtag we may be the first, but certainly won't be the last. That's what drives us. Thank you very much. And these are the coordinators right now, and myself, Barbara Senkwe, Doreen Ballo, and Charlotte Mungina Mau. So thank you very much. And any question, Doreen is online here, and Chaiva, you're also online. I would expect if there's any question that also I'll be able to contribute to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful closing presentation. And I think you took a little extra time, but it was all worth it. Yeah, so at this point, I won't hold back any longer. I think we're all itching to get into the discussion and ask a few questions and get the flow running with discussion. And I think then we can open up. You can either raise your hand, or if you have something immediate, do feel free to, first raise your hand, and then I'll be able to recognize that and then call you onto the podium. And while we wait for the hands to come through, there's one question in particular that had come, I'd seen earlier in the chat. Let me just quickly jump on to that. Pardon me. Okay, great. Okay. Okay, so it looks like I can't find it quite yet. I also have to run around to look. Any hands yet? No. Okay. Yes, there's one.
Yes, it's me, Tasneem.
Tasneem, go ahead.
I represent Water Integrity Network, and I'm joining you from Berlin. Wonderful presentations. I wish it was longer so we could hear more. My question was for Dr. Tanko, basically, on the gender strategy. And I've been looking at it and read the strategy with interest, but I couldn't find any evaluation or progress reports. So I was wondering if you could share them with us. But otherwise, I have no other questions for the other presenters. They were very comprehensive. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Can I come in, Madam Chair?
Yes, please. The floor is yours. Go ahead.
Okay, now I can even show my my video. Yes, thank you so much, Tasneem, for the prompt. We haven't as yet done the thorough review of our gender strategy. As you have seen, these strategies are currently under review, but the groundwork, the progress towards what we have used them for, what we have achieved, have not been done yet, but is clearly on our schedule for the next year coming, so that we see how our gender strategy, the youth policies have benefited member states across the African continent. So it has not been done yet. That's why you could not find anything on the progress towards that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that response. And that was the exact question that I was looking for. So glad you jumped in there and rescued me from searching. Yeah, so I believe there was also a question on the African Women in Sanitation Professional Network with respect to the Zambian chapter. And I'm happy to address that as well and say thank you for actually highlighting that. We are indeed the first chapter on the continent, and the first chapter, Zambia chapter itself, to be launched. And we look forward to other countries taking a similar step. But for now, I feel there's a lot of progress that has been done or has been made. We began with the launch a couple of weeks ago. So 2 weeks ago, we launched the chapter and had quite a lot of interest coming in from women in the sector in Zambia. But not only so, we had a lot of support from the ministry and other supporting organizations at national level. So I think we are really energetic and we're drummed up and good to go, and that's really the best thing, to get the support from the national level as well as the global level as well. So thank you for that. Do we have any additional questions? Maybe we can take one more before we wrap up. Great.
I try to raise my...
Nelson. Go ahead.
Yes, please. Thank you. And I'd like to thank Sareen and the rest of the colleagues for putting up this particular important meeting, looking at the innovative and evidence-based water initiatives that advance water sector transformation. I wanted to probably come to Dr. Tanko and maybe also Sheila. She mentioned some interesting perspectives. And of course, I know Doc William, probably if there is an opportunity, you might come in as well. I wanted to understand what can you say would be the best things that maybe governments in Africa should really be doing if we are to come up with some kind of incentives that really would generate the much needed change and engagement of maybe the youth and the other, let's say, women in the sector, because as you said, especially other, sometimes it's as if it's a boys' club, and if you stray into some meetings, yes, but it's a question of how can we make sure that this is really taken up and maybe in a structured manner at the government level, and what kind of incentives can we really put in place for this? I'm asking this question for a friend. Thank you so much. And I am Nelson. I work with the African Development Bank, but focusing on issues of rural water supply and sanitation within the bank. Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. Jawi, do you want me to come in? Let them...
Yes, please.
Hello.
Do go ahead.
Oh, thanks so much, Mr. Nelson, for the question. You are already prompting out some few items that we will look at in the call to action. But I will take this. You know, our youth, like some of us have mentioned, our heads of states need to, hold the bull by the horns. What do I mean by this? We need to ensure that we have clear policies to support startups. Because some of the youth are very innovative, some of our young girls, our young women too, are also very innovative. But sometimes the startup capital, the idea could be there, but the startup capital for these innovative initiatives could be lacking. Another important thing, and I'm talking from experience from most of the countries, let alone Ghana and Nigeria, you will see some of the youth, our able women, wanting to be able to move on into the sanitation and toilet businesses, but they are burdened with taxation. I'm clearly aware of one group in Ghana that was not able to clear their assets, their equipments from the port, because the tax was just so huge for them to be able to come in with the sanitation and hygiene equipments that they were importing outside. And I think we will also hold our governments accountable in the sense that most of these governments need to open what I call, or set up what I call, the ICT or technology parks. So that these ICT or technology parks across most of these countries, the youth will be able to come in to learn, they will have the needed skills, and after 3-6 months, they are able to acquire the needed skills, then the capital support can then come in so that they will have something in hand, both equipment and financial resources, to be able to embark on some of these innovative ideas. I'll pause here because of our limited time.
Thank you for that response. I hope that addresses your question very well, Nelson. And I'm sure this engagement can continue post this webinar. I think we're very familiar with each other now, and we can always pick up the engagements bilaterally. And with that said, I would love to thank everyone for the presentations, the wonderful presentations. I think there's a lot that really came out of these discussions, and we hope that we can continue the discussions on different forums. We can do that personally, but there are also other forums to make use of, such as SuSanA and other groups that are happening actually online. And as much as possible, we'll also get this recording shared out there so that those that were not able to attend are able to actually have preview. Then potentially we'll also be able to capture as much content and questions from virtual platforms. So thank you very much. I would love to invite Dr. Tanko one more time to give us some closing remarks, and then maybe we can have Sareen as well, just to give 1 or 2 last words. So, Dr. Tanko.
Thank you so much. I want to share this one last slide that will give us the opportunity to call for action. Call for action in the sense that, okay, it's not trying to pop up because of our limited time. We are all, concerned when it comes to gender and hygiene and sanitation issues. Where our first important call to action is to our heads of states and governments to recognize the essential role of women and youth initiatives in the formulation of policies and their implementation. We are also calling on member states to embrace fully gender-sensitive initiatives and ensure that they are well financed. We call on AMCOW AU for the creation and strengthening of existing platforms. For instance, this African Women Initiative on Professional Initiative on Water and Sanitation, so that we will be able to support them across all member countries. We are also calling on the African CSOs to undertake youth and gender-focused initiatives, such that capacity on that. We are calling on the African Development Bank also to support the financing of innovative wash startups by our young women and also the youth. And then we call on ANEW to lead the formation of the African Women Platform for Champions and Change Agents. We have the professional network, but I think we now need champions and change agents to be able to drive us successful on gender and youth issues. Go further on AMCOW to establish the e-learning platforms to enhance learning, sharing, and innovation. And we call on the academia to ensure that gender-sensitive research are undertaken so that we have evidence, we have clear-cut data, well-disaggregated data to inform policy formulation and planning. And we further call on the AU, lastly, to create space for women and youth participation at high-level decision-making. These are our 9 clear points of call to action by heads of states, high-level decision-makers, AMCOW, and the African Union. Thank you so much. I will share all these slides after this.
Thank you. Sareen?
We heard your call. Thank you all for this wonderful presentations, insightful, informative. We will continue to support. We will continue to strengthen our capacities, ensure that really the dream is that no woman to suffer, to access water, to put an end, whether in our lifetime or the next, to women walking for water and all the issues that come with it, to support women's empowerment, our girls, and our professionals as we move forward. We thank you very much for being here with us. And we will, I think, one, develop this position paper, as I had mentioned earlier on. And number two, see that we can actually have more of these webinars. Thank you all. And we look forward to continuing the conversation with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, and have a lovely evening, morning, afternoon, whatever it is, wherever you are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you so
bye-bye.
much. Good
Thank
initiative.
you.
Let's keep the
Bye.
discussion going.
Well done, everyone. Thank you.
Okay. Ada, all the best in UK.
Yeah, Tanko, we need to talk very quickly.